I'll call to order this meeting of the Bloomington Common Council for Wednesday, November 13th, 2024, a consensus building activity session. Will Clerk Bolden please call the roll?
Councilmember Flaherty?
Here.
Rallo?
Here.
Ruff is not present yet. Piedmont Smith?
Here.
Strasburg? Here. Asari?
Here.
Rosenbarger? Here. And Daly?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move on to our land and labor acknowledgement. We recognize that the city of Bloomington sits on native land. The city, as well as city administrative buildings, are on the traditional homelands of the Miami, Delaware, Potawatomi, and Shawnee people. And we acknowledge they are past, present, and future caretakers of this land. We also acknowledge that much of the economic progress and development in Indiana, and specifically Bloomington, resulted from the unpaid labor and forced servitude of people of color, specifically enslaved African labor. We acknowledge that this land remains home to and a site of gathering and healing for many indigenous and other people of color, and commit to the work necessary to create and promote a more equitable and just community. We move forward knowing and acknowledging our rich, complicated, and sometimes painful past so that we can learn from it and create a true land of opportunity. To summarize our agenda tonight, we will first have a review and discussion of a proposal to merge the Traffic Commission. Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Commission and Parking Commission into a new Advisory Transportation Commission. Then we will move on to a second item of discussion, which is the Common Council meeting schedule for 2025. And then the fourth item on the agenda, actually, we can strike because it's for action regarding pending litigation, and we have no action to vote on this evening. So I will invite members of the Planning and Transportation staff to the table to talk to us about the merger of three commissions to form the Advisory Transportation Commission. And I will say that we will have a more relaxed interaction among council members and staff tonight so that we can have a real discussion. But we will have public comment on each of the major discussion items as well.
I have a presentation, if that's...
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Also, my computer doesn't hold a charge, so I might have to sit somewhere else for the presentation part.
Okay, whatever you need to do.
Okay, yeah, yes, I got that. Sorry, I just want to be as difficult as possible. Might just work, okay. Oh, and also I'm on the Zoom, Ryan Roebling, if you could make a guest host. Thank you.
Roebling from Planning and Transportation, getting his presentation ready.
Okay, sorry about all that. Thanks for bearing with me. So why are we proposing to combine the traffic, parking, and bicycle safety commissions is the question we're all here to answer. The major reason is we have a stated goal of eliminating traffic fatalities and serious injuries by 2039. That gives us 15 years to make the necessary changes to the city's transportation system to prioritize safety. These changes need to be holistic and account for all roadway users at every stage of right-of-way use. As you know, we currently have 3 boards that act as part of a public process for practical transportation matters within the city. Each of these boards has a number of specific duties assigned to them. All 3 commissions were asked to draft letters to council last year that discussed which duties they were and were not completing or being completed by the respective boards. The Traffic Commission, for instance, has not kept up with its duty of educational activities in traffic matters. This is likely for a number of reasons, including relying on volunteer hours to create a process, let alone the required hours to host such activities. Some of the other duties also have heavy overlap with one or both of the other commissions. The Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission has an example of goals that are lack of particular depth, but also provide for potentially too wide of a breadth of responsibilities. One such goal is to host cycling and walking events which will attract visitors from outside the city. The Parking Commission has a number of well-established goals that it's been unable to achieve, potentially, again, due to heavy reliance on volunteer labor. For instance, one of the Parking Commission's loftier goals is to apply for grants or other funds to help carry out their stated goals. The Parking Commission is also behind on a number of its duties related to providing parking studies. While volunteer labor is helpful, it's likely inappropriate to rely so heavily on it to produce a report that staff could and should be producing. So there are a number of challenges with the current commission structure, coordination, overlapping responsibilities, et cetera. This can result in fragmented decision-making and lack of synergy. It can also be difficult for members of the public to muddle through. The classic example is, how do you get a stop sign in your neighborhood? Residents can bring their request directly to a commission. All three commissions allow for public input or public comment. But how do you know which commission is the correct one? They can and hopefully do also bring that to staff, who has to answer the same question. So does this stop sign impact motor vehicle traffic? Absolutely. But is it being provided primarily for pedestrian safety? Potentially. Will a change in the intersection require changes to parking? Maybe. Those are all questions you have to answer, and would those questions change the commissions that the request is being presented to? Probably. Should members of the public be required to go to 2 or 3 different meetings in order to have their request heard? The 7 line is one of the best examples of the current system working at its best, but showing some of its weaknesses. The 7 line proposal features elements that would affect motor vehicle traffic, bike and ped traffic, and parking. So a presentation and resolution was brought to all 3 commissions in order to seek their approval. Many of the conversations were repetitive, but some ideas were only brought up in one commission and not contemplated by the others.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brooks, is there any way to make this a little bit larger?
Maybe, sure.
It's hard to read.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I have a lot of slides I wanted to get through, but, oops. What does this do? Oh, no, that wasn't it. I think that's as big as I can go, unfortunately. Does that work? Oh, sorry. Oh, yep, sorry. Okay. So the question is, how would a conflict be resolved between the different commissions who have different responsibilities and weights to their decisions? This is a problem we're going to run into again with the Hopewell West, Jackson, and Roger Street improvements project. A member of engineering department is going to present the design to each of the 3 commissions. This not only creates time burden for staff, but also members of the public who wish to voice their concerns or support. So the city has a goal of fostering more and diverse community engagement, but multiple meetings, each with their own public comment period, can often come across as burdensome to those who will wish to be heard. It also prevents staff from going out to the community and getting public feedback that way, because so much time is dedicated to commission's schedule. So the current system provides for a lack of holistic planning that can result in missed opportunities for comprehensive transportation planning. The recent West Allen Street Greenway project which was approved by the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission, affected all aspects of transportation, including pedestrians, bicycles, and motor vehicles. One thing that they all have in common is that they are, in fact, traffic, and they all have safety needs. So the plan included changes to on-street parking, which were reviewed by the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission and certainly considered, but the proposal also brought forward a member of the public who had questions about additional on-street parking that could potentially be removed. This couldn't be, it was triggered by the Greenway project, but couldn't be considered as part of the Greenway project by the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission because it wasn't included in the original plan and therefore had to go to the Parking Commission despite being done at the exact same time. Another peculiarity with the current system is that traffic calming projects, particularly resident-led ones, often focus more on calming motor vehicle traffic and improving general safety rather than increasing bicycle and pedestrian usage, yet those projects are reviewed by a commission primarily intended to promote safety for cyclists and pedestrians. All right, equity and inclusion are a transportation safety commission needs to include a stronger emphasis on equity, ensuring that the needs of all transportation users, including cyclists, pedestrians, and public transit users, are addressed comprehensively. Equity and inclusion are not currently considered with membership of the in the current boards, potentially causing structural exclusion. Currently, membership requirements limit the number of eligible residents. Parking Commission, for example, requires that some members be merchants owning a business in the city. The Bike Ped Safety Commission has a requirement that some members be a member of the Bloomington Bicycle Club or Bloomington Track Club, and other requirements that a member be a member of the IU Student Association. 10 of the 25 members of the existing transportation boards are not members of the general public and are therefore not part of a different group. 4 members are members of staff who are helping to draft ordinances and make other recommendations to those committees. This oftentimes puts those members at odds with the other members and prevents them from being members of the public from feeling heard. All of those restrictions, simply put, reduce equity. Additionally, it puts staff at a disadvantage time-wise. There is a staff liaison for each of the 3 commissions, 4 staff members who aren't staff liaisons who serve on the boards and commissions, and a handful of staff members who draft reports and otherwise assist in running those meetings. Often, staff members must present the same report to multiple commissions. All right, so going back to the question at the top of the presentation, why are we proposing to combine the Traffic, Parking, and Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission? It's because Bloomington needs a commission that, with the clearly identified task and responsibility for helping the city achieve its transportation goals. The aim of the new commission is to make roadways safe, promote multimodal transportation, provide equitable access, and encourage more feedback through community-centric design. So responsibility is shared, which is why the makeup of the Transportation Commission is so important. Decision makers need to be listening to those with safety concerns. There are 4 other bodies who make decisions in the city currently that directly impact the right-of-way, that being Plan Commission, the Board of Public Works, Public Transportation Corporation Board of Directors, and you all Common Council. But there is no joint there's no joint review or communication between these groups, and often decisions related to roadways are not considered in the context of safety. Members of those boards may not even be aware that the role they're playing in transportation safety systems is making the system safer or less safe. So the proposed commission aims to address this equity consideration by asking a member of the Council for Community Accessibility or a designated representative to serve on the new commission. It also calls for 2 members who are members of or representatives of community organizations dedicated to groups who are often left out of transportation decisions. Finally, the proposal aims to go one step further than the current boards and commissions by requiring that 2 members have demonstrated experience using forms of travel other than personal motor vehicles as their primary method for transportation, ensuring that a vulnerable road user will always have a seat at the decision-making table. Safety concerns cannot be addressed if they aren't being heard. A perfect example of this is in 2001, the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission asked city staff to consider installing no turn on reds signage at intersections with high pedestrian traffic. In the following decade, 6 intersections received no turn on reds. And it took nearly 20 years for the widespread adoption of this safety improvement to be completed. Safety improvements cannot continue to take 20 years. The membership of this new commission aims at bringing advocates and decision makers together in one place to have an open and clear discussion about safety and transportation so that decision makers can go out and accomplish our community goals. A major design of the new commission will be that a requirement that all amendments to the municipal code, as well as transportation projects, will need to be reviewed by the commission. It will also require that changes in projects will meet explicit criteria included in that proposal. So that is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? Is it consistent with best practices for eliminating transportation-related fatalities and serious injuries within the city? Is it consistent with promoting sustainable design and equitable access for all transportation facility users? And has it provided for community-based solutions and allowed for adequate public input? This is similar to how Plan Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals operate and will ensure that projects meet the requirements of the city. This is not a requirement for the current commissions and can result in decisions being made without clear justification, something that both I know staff would like and I suspect council would also enjoy hearing and being aware of. The new commission will have other specified duties, including the supervision and approval of transportation-related projects, including traffic safety analysis, and it will also provide a forum for public to discuss transportation-related issues. The new commission will make recommendations on public policy, including parking policy, including pricing and location. Additionally, the new commission will take on responsibilities from the current commissions, such as the local motion grant and traffic calming and greenways program. A common concern we hear, especially from the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission and parking commissions, is that they would like to hear additional engineering details at their meetings. So this is largely due to the fact that no city engineer is required to be present at those meetings. The new commission would be primarily staffed by the engineering department in order to ensure that an engineer is always present at the meetings, ready to provide technical expertise and hear all ideas. The long-term intent is that the traffic engineer position, which is remained to be unfilled but will hopefully be filled soon, will serve as the primary staff liaison, while other staff from engineering, P&T, Public Works, ESD will handle the actual duties of writing and presenting reports, conducting studies, et cetera. This is similar to how BPW works, where the director of Public Works acts as the liaison, but staff from every department produces most of the work. So this should not and will not increase engineering's time commitment or workload, as the traffic engineer already serves as a representative of the traffic commission, and engineering already writes many of the reports for each of the 3 commissions. As a final note, the current staff time required to plan and staff is a hindrance to the work that staff could be providing to a transportation commission. Items like parking studies, for example, could be provided on a more regular basis and have a more consistent quality if so much staff time was not being dedicated to these 3 meetings. All told, just for the planning department, there are 3 positions that each dedicate roughly a third of their time to running these meetings, which is time not spent on improving transportation, mode shift, or safety in the city. Finally, between 2019 and 2023, there have been 443 fatal or life-altering crashes on Bloomington streets, Currently, there's no community body that has a stated goal of ensuring that the city continues to strive towards completing the complete elimination of roadway fatal and serious injury crashes. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Just one quick follow-up. Those serious injury and fatalities, that was just for 5 years?
Correct. That was from 2019 to 2023.
Okay. Are there, first, any clarifying questions? And then we can just open it up for discussion. Yeah, Dave. I'll be informal here.
Okay. Looks like it's working. So thanks for that presentation. Mr. Roebling, I'm worried. I'd like to know what the maybe the council's role would be in future implementation of traffic calming, greenways, and that sort of thing. But would say changes in pricing of parking come before the council still?
Yes. So
Okay.
Immediately, nothing would change, but we would happy to have further discussions if we thought other things should change.
Okay, so installation of stop signs, any changes in neighborhood parking zones, pricing of parking, those would all be decisions continuing to be made by the council with recommendations by the ATC.
Correct. Yeah. So you would all still vote on that. The ATC would just make a recommendation on any of those changes.
Now, what about so the Bike and Ped Safety Commission has the ability to make expenditures, large expenditures for traffic calming and greenways projects. Would that be transferred to the ATC, or is that, where is that now?
Yeah, so on day one, everything that is assigned to one of the three commissions would just be assigned to the ATC. If we wanted to have a further conversation, we would be more than happy to do that.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that clarification.
Other questions? Hopi.
Hopefully, there we go. Dave reminded me when he was asking about some of the things that happen now and where they would go. Right now, Bike Ped has some grant money, some small grants. Will that just roll over to the ATC and basically the same procedure, just a different
Yes.
body? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And it also says in the resolution, like draft that you gave us, it just said that they would, where'd it go? That they would meet according to, they would establish their own rules and procedures to define meeting schedule, et cetera. Are they meeting once a month, twice a month? Like, what's the frequency?
Yeah, so part of that is we don't know how often they should have to meet. And we would like to leave that up to the actual commission to decide. Maybe it is more frequently, maybe it is less frequently. Currently, if it were to stay exactly the same and we change nothing, which is not what we're actually proposing to do long-term, you'll see that with the Safe Streets and Roads for All action plan coming forward. But you could essentially rotate this around a quarterly meeting. So if that's something that existed, we could continue to do that. The Parking Commission is the one exception where they would probably still meet more frequently, but we could consolidate traffic and Bike Ped into quarterly meetings fairly easily. We end up canceling most Traffic Commission meetings recently anyway.
Did you just with that implication say that we could do kind of a different thing, which is to combine Bike Ped and traffic, but leave Parking Commission?
Yeah, that is something that's been floated multiple times. The counter to that is that twofold. One, it shouldn't just be a safety commission, which is a primary focus because it hasn't been in the past, but we should also focus on mode shift and transportation demand, or parking management is transportation demand management, and those should be considered simultaneously.
That reminds me of another thing, but I don't want to monopolize time. We have a is it a traffic demand manager position? Is that correct? And they are not listed as somebody who would potentially be on this, and maybe they should be. Has there been conversation about their level of participation in this?
Yeah, so the transportation demand manager sometimes appears in front of the parking commission. Currently, it is something we would like to incorporate more. There is no formal plan. We haven't addressed that in the Title II amendment, but it is something we would like to incorporate more, especially if they don't have to go to multiple meetings every month.
Yes, Matt?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm a little curious if there are anticipated differences from the Q&A we might engage in from the dais in this discussion. So I'm going to introduce one now, which is reacting to something I heard just now, which is to say that in my experience on the Parking Commission and just with other city commissions, I don't always find that city staff being seated on commissions is a great fit. The expertise is very valuable to call on from across departments, but typically if there's an administration position on an item, the staff member is obliged to stick to the position of the administration, and so that just sort of undercuts the purpose of a body of, residents. You can make the same argument about a council appointment, but, just pointing that out, in general, I'm not sure. I think staff seated on commissions is the best structure, but I do appreciate the proposed structure. Also had a question about the findings, or I don't think that word's actually used, but there was a reference to Section 4B under I guess that's powers and duties, to review all transportation projects. There's sort of a list to determine if the proposed change, aligns with kind of these 4 different areas. You just likened that to the BZA and the Plan Commission. Do you anticipate that would essentially take the form of a formal finding of some kind? So it would act like each decision would actually go through a criteria and say, we find this is consistent with the comprehensive plan. This is not consistent with best practices for eliminating fatalities, and therefore we're recommending changes. That type of thing?
That is absolutely what we're proposing to do.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, the last time that we talked about this, you had some concerns that you hadn't quite been able to put your finger on. How are you feeling about it now?
Well, I kind of alluded to it in my question, which is that I've been of the mind that because the council heretofore until about 2019, I think, was responsible for any Title 15 changes, for instance, and so it would come before the council if there were going to be speed bumps or whatever, as a final sort of check. They were invariably approved. But I think that because we're the fiduciary body of the city, that large expenditures maybe should be in our hands, or at least we should have a role to play in the final approval. So if the ATC deems that a greenway should be funded and it goes through the process and so forth, I think it should come before the council. Now the question was, I think in debate about this, because I brought it forward as a code change and it didn't pass, but I'd like maybe to revisit it. The question is, where does the council, in terms of its participation, play a role? That's another topic. Overall, I think that the merger of these commissions is a good idea, because I think that overall, a holistic view of transportation, policy and safety and road changes and things like that, it makes sense for, a single body. And I like the fact that it's safety-based and then we have it's goal-directed to reduce accidents and stuff like that. So I think that's my major concern, is what does, and Matt made a really good point about, that, there tends to be this check and balance between the council and the mayor and the administration. And the administration is, of course, filled with experts and, very good. But the council has a role to play in this, and I think that you could have, various people who have certain ideas, with mayoral appointments kind of leading the cart and maybe not, and we want to make sure that it is truly a commission that involves public and that, it's a community-based. And that's our role too, because we're elected, right? So overall, I'm very supportive. I'm kind of mulling over what the council's role should be in this.
As relates to that concern, do you sort of view them as two different things, or do you view sort of any progress on this as being contrary to the conversation that you want to have around council's role on some of these things?
Yeah, Ryan, could you put up that slide again in terms of the appointments and the relative share of the administration versus council and other groups, because that. So that's something I think maybe we should scrutinize a bit.
Yeah, that's what I was also going to bring up. I know Ryan and Isabel was there as well. I mean, I think I'm a little concerned around the specificity around some of them, and just from past experience, how difficult it is when you have these very specific criteria that you have to find in appointing people. It sometimes gets a little frustrating, but.
Referring to is a meeting of the special committee on council processes where
Right.
we talked about this. So,
But-
public meeting.
Yep.
But it looks like, the mayor doesn't directly appoint anybody.
And do we have
Oh, except for somebody from the Community Council for Community Accessibility.
Wasn't there another slide that
had the
current
people? I think it's the slide before you mean?
Oh, okay, was I
That
looking
one?
at something?
You mean
else?
this one?
Challenges to the current story. Okay, never mind. I was confused with that. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it does raise to me an interesting question about, when we're taking, what is this, 18 people? 25 people and turning it into, 9. Are those the right 9 and the right appointments?
Example.
Well, right, but then on the next one, if you look at the proposal, it's like all council appointments, right? Which, maybe that's what we want, but.
No, it's 4. It's 4 plus 1.
Yeah, there's 4 council appointments and then a whole bunch of people appointed who are in other positions.
4 council appointments plus
Right.
1 council member.
Right.
The other positions tend to be bodies that are either all or mostly mayoral appointments. There are exceptions to that. Council for Community Accessibility is sort of, I think, self-constituted. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this the concern of asking a volunteer to, and of course I like the or a designated representative sort of deals with this issue to an extent, but asking somebody who's already volunteering to say, actually, you want to volunteer a little bit more is whether that should just be a straight up appointment. Like why not? Like why does it need to be? Why do we want it from community accessibility? Like what's the sort of theory of change here, right? Of how this grouping is put together, pain points that might exist, right?
So CCA, I hope that one's apparent. Those are specifically vulnerable road users.
Right.
But the other 3, a member of the BT board, Planning Commission, and Public Works, they are all decision makers who are currently making decisions about right-of-way use, and they might not be aware of the decisions they're making and the impact they are having on safety. So the idea is, and council, this also applies to council, the idea is to bring them to the conversation and ensure that they hear it specifically related to transportation and transportation safety, rather than Planning Commission, who is often thinking about just the design or location of a building, for instance.
I have a question about the transportation committees and the new ATC's duty of educational outreach. So you said that the current traffic commission, not transportation, the current traffic commission hasn't really done any educational outreach. How do you think they're going to have time to do it when all these other duties are under the Advisory Transportation Commission?
Yeah, great question. So the idea here is that staff will be able to step up, and then the new commission will be able to guide it rather than be the ones who are, volunteering and putting in the labor. So Environmental Commission is a good example. We have the senior environmental planner. They do a lot of the groundwork, but then EC members show up and table at events and things like that. So that it would be kind of an approach similar to that. Whereas staff currently is divided doing labor for 3 commissions. If we had one member of this planning department who could go out and do that kind of legwork, that would be helpful.
And that would be engineering staff?
No, so the only engineering staff requirement is that the city engineer or the transportation or a traffic engineer show up to the meeting. That is the only requirement in the staff duty responsibilities. Planning staff is more than happy to step up for most of the other responsibilities that would be created.
But the language says the commission shall be primarily staffed by the engineering department.
Correct. Yeah, just at the meeting and slightly before. But for other duties, other staff members could step up. The goal for that is currently the parking commission has the requirement that a member of planning staff be the staff liaison, and so that's something we kind of stole from that commission, where just the only real goal, only real ability that the long-range planner, who is the staff person for that, has is to run the meeting functionally and answer any questions that come up. So that is kind of the goal we have for the city engineer or traffic engineer position in the new commission. Rather than doing all of the reports and outside work, it's just being present and being able to answer any questions.
Okay. That seems different than most commissions, which are staffed by a single department. So that might need to be more clear. I don't really understand the language in here where it says shall be primarily staffed by engineering department. When serving as a steering committee, the ATC shall be staffed by planning and transportation department. So I don't know when it's serving as a steering committee. That may need to be clarified.
Yeah, so that's something that we would clarify with the ATC was the thought. That's another reason why we didn't want to pre-plan meetings, because sometimes those could be during the day. For instance, we have the College and Walnut Steering Committee, Corridor Study Steering Committee. We've met during the day rather than at an evening meeting. And then an engineer doesn't need to be at that meeting. That's a planning-led discussion. So we wanted to just make that clear that on those meetings, that is a planning-led initiative.
Like how we all feel about this, right? Because Dave's been clear about it. I think it's a generally good idea. Is anybody have strong opinions against this?
Well, perhaps could we hear more about the overall feedback and potential adjustments that have been made in light of I know there's been presentations to the 3 commissions that would be affected.
So the largest feedback we heard is that it's a reduction in the number of voices being heard, because there are going from 25 to 9, although it's more like 20 to 9 because of the staff appointees. So that is a fair and valid criticism. The idea, though, that there is one clear public meeting that is where the public should go to be heard is kind of our goal there, whereas currently we have 3 poorly attended public meetings. We might be able to encourage additional public input if there's one clear Monday meeting or what have you, where you can go to the ATC to have your traffic questions answered. A second one we heard is, and we made a change to this one, was that there is no accounting for vulnerable road users, so we wrote that in to require that council appoint 2 people who have demonstrated experience, unlike the other 2 positions, which are just a recommendation that they, if you can't find someone to fill that position, it's fine to go somewhere else. But I think in Bloomington, Indiana, you won't have difficulty finding someone who is not a car driver to serve on this board. The third is the amount of work that they do, and will they be able to continue to provide that level of output, and kind of the line of thinking is, again, Traffic Commission often gets canceled due to a lack of agenda items. The Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission and Parking Commission are both slightly more commission-led rather than staff-led, so we continue to meet when they feel they need to meet. But they both don't provide the level of output that we would hope that a commission would provide with routine resolutions, title amendment proposals, and studies. So the Parking Commission is, I think, 5 years behind currently on providing parking studies, things like that. We would like to accelerate those to move them on. So those are the three big criticisms we've heard and a slight response to them.
Any other feedback or questions?
Stuff. Is that okay? Thank you for being here. On one of the slides, it didn't say, it's like, is consistent with the comprehensive plan. I didn't see that it said the transportation plan.
The transportation plan is an amendment to the comprehensive plan. They are
Okay.
the one and the same.
So it's just in there.
Yeah.
What about the amount of work that some of these commission members do? And then I guess just like combining it into one, do you think it would feel overwhelming to folks, or you would need like longer meetings? Or I guess I just see like a lot of advocacy that comes out of some of the commissions, and like, do you think that would be lost or squished, into a different kind of frame? I don't, is that an okay question? Yeah. Okay.
I don't know that I think they'll be squished. I think they'll be focused. I think the idea is to amplify the voice and focus it rather than like I said, in 2001, Bicycle Pedestrian Commission made a recommendation that took 20 years to implement. That shouldn't keep happening. And that is what was coming out of the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission until the Traffic Calming and Greenway program was adopted. And then they finally produced some like notable real world work.
Okay, thank you. Also, two little things. The Council for Community Accessibility, it said like appointed by the mayor. I don't really know the mechanisms of that, like why wouldn't the committee choose its designee? And just how that bullet point said, or a representative, it wasn't clear to me if that the council would pick, that council, the CCA would pick a representative, or like the mayor could pick someone from CCA, or like anyone to represent CCA.
That's a good question. We should maybe rewrite it to clarify, or just take out the mayoral appointment. The idea was that's a volunteer body, so they aren't pre-appointed. So the idea was that you would go to the mayor and be like, I volunteer, and then they would appoint them. But yeah, we could easily clarify that.
I was just asking because it did look different than the transit board, where it said they appoint someone or they designate a representative.
Yes.
So-
Yeah.
The point is the Council of Community Accessibility isn't formally a city body.
Right.
But could they recommend a member of their own to be sort of formalized by mayoral appointment based on their recommendation? Is that more the?
That's how I was thinking of it when I wrote it. I could rewrite it to be exactly that. That makes perfect sense, yeah.
I have another little bullet point here. It's a regular size bullet point. It says, safe streets for all. Like one of the recommendations was some kind of like crash analysis staff or something to like go out and like, would this commission have anything to do with that recommendation? Like do you see in the future that being like paid staff or like people from this commission, I guess, looking at crashes and like making emergency changes?
Yeah, so it would absolutely be paid staff, and this commission would help in that. The final product, because the SS4A action plan calls for us to, if we make a change, to document before and after, and so we would want to present that to someone. That would be this group. This you'll see it if you haven't already read the action plan. They proposed to do something similar to this group. We narrowed it down to just identifying this. They tried to, or their idea was to make it be the Board of Public Works. We thought that would be inappropriate and a heavy burden on the Board of Public Works, so we thought it was better aligned with this new commission. But to review those changes, like 180-day orders that the city engineer can authorize. Currently, they are presented to Traffic Commission, but there's no requirement to do that. This would hopefully require that.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't quite understand that. So currently, the engineer can implement a 100-day, 80-day order for traffic. And currently, he presents that to the Traffic Commission. Are you saying in future it would have to be approved by the ATC, or he would just present it to the ATC?
He would, yeah, the traffic engineer or city engineer would still present it to the ATC, but it would have a more formalized findings rather than just saying this is what we're doing for 180 days. So it would have a before study and an after study to show what effects it had. Part of the 180-day order is one of the options or opportunities it provides is the ability to experiment with traffic conditions. So that's something we want to take on more and present more findings on, and this commission would help in that.
Okay, so it's not giving this permission more power, like to recommend 180-day orders?
No, that's still the city engineer.
Okay.
I have some questions about the demonstrated experience criteria of the appointments. I mean, first of all, it seems like that's what the interviews of the candidates are for, right? Those who are going to be making the appointment, interview, they discuss, they decide, what that, if a candidate is suitable for appointment to that given board or commission. Second of all, then defining what demonstrable experience is. I mean, and what level, and relative to another applicant. And then it also raises to me questions about, well, why wouldn't then we apply a standard like that to other boards and commissions, like they have to have a demonstrable, experience in this or that area for whatever that commission does or focuses on. So, I mean, not necessarily asking you to respond to that. I'm just, those are concerns to me.
Yeah, I know you didn't ask me to respond, but I'll take a crack at it anyway. I would say that is what the interview process for. This is just to guide you in that process. You get to still define it, that it's specifically undefined, so that you can say, yeah, this person walks to school most days. They have a demonstrated experience in not being a primarily car driver, essentially, or they ride the bus. Whatever it is, it's open to interpretation in a way that hopefully doesn't eliminate a great number of Bloomingtonians.
Well, to me, that makes it unnecessary then. It's redundant.
It makes it what? It makes what unnecessary?
Writing it in the code?
Yeah, right.
Like why specify it, in the first place?
Just because those of us sitting around the table now can think that is totally logical, that somebody on this commission we should have somebody who has demonstrated experience using forms other than motor vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows if the next council will feel the same way? I mean,
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
I think it's good to have it in there. I don't see the problem with it.
Yeah, and also, I do want to say, I was trying to see if I still had a tab up, but the HPC also has qualifications for appointments. So it wouldn't be the only board or commission that has those kinds of qualifications.
Right, absolutely.
So-
There are others as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave.
So I want to drill down a little bit on most of the operations of the ATC are going to be assisted by engineering, and then in part, when it comes to things like studies and consultants and grants and things like that, it'll have a role of a steering committee, and it'll be, that will be, the liaison will be planning and transportation. Will the commission, could you define steering committee? Is it simply a recommendation, or is it actually a directing or deciding what to pursue?
So a steering committee generally is, we have something that you all decided that we need to do. Corridor studies are a prime example. That was something that was written into the transportation plan, and a body needs to guide it through its process. We're just saying that that decided upon item should be guided through its process through this commission, rather than reassembling a commission and finding 20 more volunteers who are in Bloomington and interested in traffic or transportation decisions.
Okay, and how, what volume of, say, planning or grants or studies will be going to the ATC? Will it be everything from regarding transportation that's evolving from P&T will go to the ATC for its review and decision?
So it'll be everything, steering committee aside, it'll be all Title 15 and Title 12 amendments and any other titles that are relevant. And then it'll be projects. So similar to the, actually a good example is the Indiana Safety Corridor Improvement Project. Currently, there's no requirement for anybody to review it. We're saying that a body should be required to review it to ensure that it is meeting the goals of the comprehensive plan, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Opie.
So that exchange made me think about the College Walnut Corridor Study, which had its own working group. But what I just heard you say, I felt like was basically that the ATC would end up being like the working groups related to those studies. Did I hear that right?
Correct. Yeah, so it would be the default steering committee for a group like that. Part of what we would propose in our thinking is that we would ask when the ATC were to get started, we would give them the ability to expand membership for assigned duties, and then they could have a steering committee, because it wouldn't be representing, or it wouldn't be forwarding items like Title 15 amendments on. It wouldn't have to act as an official commission. It could act as just a steering committee. So they could expand. For example, on College and Walnut, you could invite members of the public who are business owners or residents along the corridor to join the meeting and have a more formal conversation.
Basically, I'm trying to go back to the ordinance for just a second, where we were talking about it when it's serving as a steering committee, then it would be staffed by planning and transportation. So in that example, they would be serving as a steering committee for, say, looking at the College Walnut Corridor. I guess that brings me back to concern that has already been mentioned, but I haven't said it specifically, is the workload on this singular commission. And it feels like maybe a lot.
I would say that is a fair concern. The benefit would be we would be able to have more frequent and routine meetings to split that up, whereas we had to wait until we collected a lot of data on the College and Walnut Corridor study to have a meeting, once every handful of months, to have a smaller discussion, or a larger discussion. We could have smaller discussions and constantly be moving the project forward, rather than hitting these lag times where it's now taking 2 years to complete a corridor study.
So then just to clarify, you're not concerned about the workload. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. No, like I said, currently the College and Walnut Corridor Study and the SS for a steering committee, they both are made up of members of the current groups, so the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission, Traffic Commissions, et cetera, and other groups. So it would still function in that way, where they could meet on, let's say, a random Wednesday to have a steering committee, or they could do it at their more routine agenda-based meeting.
So that sounds like maybe more than once a month meeting if they're serving as a steering committee and doing their other business.
Potentially, but not by default. That's part of why we didn't want to set up a routine schedule. We wanted to work with the ATC to create a schedule that works for them and what they believe their workload is.
Heard you say about the workload is that only having one commission means that staff would be able to devote more time to this. Is that still true if the traffic commission and the bike ped commission are combined, leaving the parking commission separate?
I mean, it would be it would be a little bit less work for one staff member of planning, and potentially it would be less presentations from other departments.
What I'm asking is, does this really only work out well if all three of those get combined? Because earlier you said that idea had been floated to leave parking commission and have the other two, and so I'm trying to suss out whether.
Sorry, I understand your question. So my thought is, and I have talked to the long-range planner, we are fully capable of taking this on, is that the duty that Parking Commission has to meet frequently for is the parking studies. If planning staff were to take that on, we would be able to produce that internally and then just present it to the ATC rather than requiring them to meet frequently to write the actual document. So the workload should be eliminated completely for the parking study for volunteers.
For that is our appointment to the Parking Commission. We've discussed this in some of our recent meetings that there was a mammoth report produced in, what was that, 2017-ish or so, 17 or 18, by a former commissioner that is basically unreplicable. Even a much pared down version is a ton of work, and while former Councilmember Volin is very committed to taking that on, as noted, we are many years behind, and I've been advocating that we really need to just clarify the format, the actual sections and data we want to see reported, and that needs to be a staff or contractor-driven thing to produce and be presented to the relevant body. It's just apparent that it's not a reasonable amount of work for volunteers in a commission to take on.
We need to figure out what it is that we want to see reported. Who's the we in that sentence?
In that sentence, the we was the Parking Commission. That's what I've been saying in that commission meeting, and I think there's generally support for that, although we haven't voted on the matter. But that could also mean the council or the council and the administration together, or the ATC.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt if anyone. I had something that was adjacent to what Matt said, and that is, so if I'm on the commission, what would I expect to see? Because it would, it's surely years in the making to address hazards, transportation hazards, and try to get to zero accidents and fatalities. We've got plans, we've got the accident reports. On the council, we've got sidewalk committee, which we have a matrix that determines, use and cost and walk scores and equity and all of those things. So kind of along with what Matt was saying, will that be produced by the engineering and planning and to say, here's a way, there are methods to prioritize, and here's ways we can go about it, because otherwise it's a big ask to try to sort through that for a commission.
Oh, yeah. So this is being heard out of order. The Safe Streets and Roads for All Action Plan is doing exactly what you're calling for. It's prioritizing projects, and it'll help the administration and council be able to pinpoint the exact projects they need to work on. And then this ATC would just review the final proposal and design, et cetera, rather than having to prioritize each and every project.
So my main concern is this parsing what is going to be the job of the engineering staff and when it's going to be staffed by planning and transportation. And with an email exchange with Andrew Seabour, our city engineer, he also seemed unsure about that. And so I think that needs to be clarified before this comes to us for a vote. I also am a little bit concerned about workload. I mean, you said that sometimes the Traffic Commission would be canceled because there wasn't enough on the agenda. But you also said that Traffic Commission is supposed to do educational stuff, and they don't. So it seems to me that, you know, that they could meet every month with a full agenda if circumstances were different and they had educational programs. So I'm just concerned about putting all that on one commission. And I know you already stated your view that you don't think it'll be too much of a workload. So I just wanted to put those two issues out there as concerns that I have.
I don't know, I don't even know the right words here, but do you view that as a critique of putting them together, or is there a way to ameliorate that while still combining them? Like, do you think putting more people on it, like what's the, is this if it's a problem, you wouldn't want to go forward with it, or how?
Well, we definitely need to clarify the staffing. As far as the workload, I guess, since I always come back to this example of the educational outreach, do we really think they're going to do that? I mean, it hasn't been done. I can't think of a single thing where, I guess maybe 10 years ago, Bike Ped gave out little bicycle lights or something. I don't remember. But is this something that we expect them to do? And if so, I'm concerned that.
But like, I mean, I guess the question to me is, what tools might we have to ameliorate that concern? Is it, you know, do we want to remove some of the things that are on their sort of responsibilities, or make it bigger, or not merge them? You know,
I think for long-term comprehensive planning and attaining greater safety for all of our road users, a merger of the commissions is a good idea. And I think I would even include parking on that because it is using the public right-of-way. But I think that we might take the education part out of that and say this is staff's job to do the educational stuff.
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Of course, at least the three of us and Dave have been reviewing systematically boards and commissions for some time this year. And I think there is, I forget if there's an approach like this elsewhere, but I feel like it's come up in conversations with other commissions' powers and duties, things that aren't like mandates, but are sort of optional or signaled to. It could be, instead of conduct education activities, it could be make recommendations and or support, like I could imagine the commission wanting to direct or participate and be involved in educational activities, but sort of expecting that as a normal course of business year over year maybe isn't reasonable, but that doesn't mean that it's not important. And so it might include, like, we actually need a full-time staff member to do safe routes to schools, for instance, because there's not adequate attention on that. And that's not something the commission is going to do itself, but it's like an education-oriented role. And so that would be my preference, is to kind of shift the language to make it a little more open-ended, but still signal the importance of that aspect.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, so I know Andy and I both have yours is not as much a concern as mine in terms of the outlining of who's on the commission. Maybe I'm just over like the group that we have to assign for, and we can never find somebody because it's so specific. So maybe I'm like overthinking this, right? But like,
in this case, honestly, because I don't think
yes, yeah, that's fair. But like, how do we feel about the composition? I mean, the nine people, is this the right? Is it enough people? You think so?
do you feel
No, I don't
that
know. I don't know.
anybody's
I'm
not
just,
represented,
yeah, I
or
mean, because
is
the
there
feedback,
something
that based on Matt's question was that, these groups are like, hey, well, you're reducing the number of people that are here. I mean, I would venture a guess that, the administration might say, look, you're minimizing the people that I appoint to these things. And so there's a question, right, of like, we're going from 25 to 9 is, I'm kind of, I don't know what I think about it. I'm just asking, whether 9 is enough, and whether that also intersects with the question of how much work, us being a 9-person body.
Really reluctant, right. I would be really reluctant to have too many, because then quorum becomes an issue.
Right, yeah.
But I
yeah,
was
that's right.
wondering whether advisory members would be appropriate, because then they wouldn't count for quorum, but they might add voice that might otherwise be missing. But yeah.
I think as far as voices on this new commission, it's really an improvement as far as getting a broad range of people who use the public right-of-way in different ways, and especially the most vulnerable groups, and I think that's an improvement over what we currently have. And I mean, being on the interview committee for like bicycle and pedestrian safety, if we struggle to get somebody from IU Student Association, I have no idea if there's anybody from the track club. I don't even know what that is, and the Bloomington Bicycle Club, and and these actually make a lot more sense to me, that there's somebody from the bus system,
Yeah.
Preference for somebody from the school system, somebody from the Council on Community Accessibility, et cetera.
I mean, do we have any other feelings of things, between now and whenever this, I sense that we're all fairly in support of it. Is there things that we'd like to see happen between now? I mean, Isabel stated 2, but are there others?
I'll just add my 2 cents that I think this is weighted very much favorably to the council. The mayor has an appointment from accessibility. There's Plan Commission, which is generally a body of the mayor, the administration. Public Works would be mayoral. Bloomington Transit, their board is weighted toward council, 3 of 5. Then we have a council appointment, and then we have 2 council that are residents that are non-motorized users, and then 2 others from Human Rights Commission or nonprofits, et cetera. So I think this, as Isabel said, is really a reflection of vulnerable transit users and people who may have not had a voice. And I think overall it's a good reflection of the council's input in this. So
Maybe hear public comment, because I imagine it's possible we'll have follow-up conversation or questions from that, if others are.
Why don't we go ahead and move to public comment? Anybody who's present here in chambers would like to comment? I think we have a seat next to Councilmember Asare. You could come and use the microphone here and take up to 3 minutes. And then do we have, if there's anybody on Zoom, they can use the raise hand function. Ms. Williamson, is there anybody that you can tell at this point? Thank you. Okay, please state your name, and you'll have up to 3 minutes. And we do have a sign-up sheet coming your way.
My name is Joe Davis, and I have concerns about this proposal. It seems to me that this is a bit of a power grab by the executive branch to consolidate 3 commissions into one, in which the engineering department will have a very strong influence on anything that is taking place. I don't know if any of you are aware, but the engineering department has recently become a body of prosecution and has been sending evidence and prosecutorial information to the engineering department differently than before. And now the engineering department has been prosecuting people under Title 15 such that if there's any sort of evidence of trees or vegetation that is out of line, one has to go before the Board of Park Commissioners to appeal. This is brand new. This has never happened before.
Mr. Davis, please be sure to speak to the topic at hand. Which is the
This
alternative.
seems as well an expansion of the role of the engineering department to overly influence the volunteers, the people of the city who have been trying to institute safety measures from the people's standpoint. The people are the ones who are at risk here. The engineering department will have too much influence. They will be directing, as we've heard, a body that previously was comprised of 25 individuals down to a number of 9. Now, it may seem that this is better weighted, but is it really? We must think about this deeply. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person here in council chambers, come on up.
Hi, I'm Matt Gleason, and I walk and bike into town just about every day, and I think I like this plan pretty well. It seems like a way to make changes more effectively and quickly. And one of the things I noticed, I like that it's goal-oriented around safety, and I like that the breakdown of representation is a bit better than the previous. Something I noticed, and I wasn't even aware of in the previous, that the local merchants are a large portion of one of the previous boards, and I think that might not necessarily represent safety very well for people who walk and bike everywhere or use transit. And I think it'll be more effective. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, way back.
Next speaker.
Hello. Thank you for accommodating my frame. Can you hear me? Hello?
Speaking.
All right.
Sweet dulcimer.
Well, thank you. My name is Steve Olin. I am the current chair of the Parking Commission. First, I want to point out that the Council for Community Accessibility no one is appointed to it at all. It's a self-appointing commission. Anyone can join it at any time. So whoever they would decide to appoint as their representative would be based on who shows up to a meeting in a given month. I think you might want to have a slightly more strict thing for if you were to name a person like that to such a commission. But I was going to speak in favor of the Parking Commission, that it's about demand management. It's not about safety. While we've been presented questions about, say, back-in angled parking, we would be happy to defer that question to a commission focused on safety. I've been thinking for a while that the commission should be renamed the Parking Demand Management Commission. It's about land use and it's about economics. It's not about safety or movement of cars. And it should be supported, frankly, by economic and sustainable development, because that's the question. You may recall that when there was a question about Kirkwood being closed, they had questions about the cost or the revenue from parking spaces that would be closed. But parking should not take precedence over safety. I would favor a commission that combines bike, ped, and traffic. That makes sense into a transportation safety commission, and then a commission just about parking demand management, because those questions are still going to be out there and they are fundamentally different than the safety questions the other two commissions take up. There will be a presentation at tomorrow's work session of the Parking Commission, at which I will point out just how difficult it has been to compile the annual reports. But I want to point out this too. We debated the size of the Parking Commission in 2016. We could have had 7 or 5 members. The mayor famously issued his first veto in 2016 against a 7-1 vote of council for the Parking Commission that was overridden 9-0. The previous administration was famously diffident about supporting the commission thereafter. There was a point in the late teens when all of the mayor's appointments were vacant. One seat was vacant for 2 full years. Effectively, we had trouble making quorum because the administration was trying to kill the Parking Commission by ignoring it. If this is purely about staff time, maybe the city needs to hire 1 more staff member to help support existing commissions that the council has and that the city code has said is a priority of the city, but we shouldn't reward the previous administration's slow walking and desire to shed responsibility by eliminating a commission that can and does do good work. There is a model that we can look at. It's the Metropolitan Planning Organization. They have a technical advisory committee and a citizens advisory committee. There are at least 25 people involved in all 3 of those, 13 of which sit on the dais here on the second Friday of the month. We don't need that many people. If we're going to have 1 commission, I gotta go. 1 commission, we could maybe set it up that way. I'm happy to talk about it more at a later date. Thank you.
Is there anybody on Zoom who has raised a hand? Thank you. All right, another person here in council chambers.
I'm Greg Alexander. I think this is overall a good development. Obviously, we want to reduce the redundancy in the old system. There were things being heard by 2 or 3 commissions, but there was also a problem. A lot of items weren't heard by any commissions. This proposal addresses that problem. A lot will come down to the details, but having public review of projects is huge. For example, a couple years ago on 17th Street, project had a side path. I watched that happen over 5 years from when it first made priority listed engineering, and there was no opportunity to influence it. But it widened an intersection. It widened an intersection in a project that was supposed to be for safety. A major high injury intersection. An intersection that had injuries both before and after that project, including a recent fatality 2 or 3 years ago. So to me that, it went to the Traffic Commission. We were asked to approve the Title 15 change, but not the design of the project. No influence over the project whatsoever, except we could change the speed limit, arguably. The council had the same level of influence over that project, except your vote actually counted. And the Board of Public Works was the absolute closest we had to a real public review of that project, but that's just, 3 members appointed by the mayor. It's a rubber stamp. So this is awesome. That project would come before the ATC now. It's not clear how it will have influence, because the ATC can't re-engineer a project, obviously. But there will be public input. There will be people publicly saying, why are we widening an intersection when we're supposed to be improving safety? This new commission could accomplish a lot. It will serve needs the other 3 commissions weren't serving at all. It will be a lot of work to serve on this commission. There will be some long meetings, but like I've been to the long meetings at the BPSC and at the Traffic Commission. Those meetings were specifically the redundant ones. So we had the long meeting at the BPSC, and then we had the long meeting at the Traffic Commission. And having just one long meeting between the two of them will be an improvement. I think staff has done a real good job. They've listened to the specific feedback from the commissions that they've presented it to. They're doing the hard work of addressing past government failures. I urge you to support it. Probably be some small amendments. That'll be great. Thanks.
I just wanted to see what was on the other side of your screen.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. We have somebody else here in chambers?
Good evening, Council. This is Chris Frimsey from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. I do support this measure, and I've sort of talked about this at various council meetings and privately with some of you, that sort of merging and eliminating some of the commissions and boards is the right way to do. It's not a matter of how many people serve on these boards, it's how much they're being used by the council, by staff. We can have 100 people on it. If we're not getting anything that's valued to us to be better government, then what are we getting? I don't know. Now, I am a veteran of former Councilmember Volan's Parking Commission, and I do want to say he did an excellent job of doing that. I enjoyed the meetings, but it probably with some of these other ones needs to be cleaned up of what it's doing, even not just bringing these three ones together and putting it into one. And that study, as Mr. Flaherty says, is just not doable. We should be doing reports on our actions, not the parking unit from Public Works. Is Mr. Roblin, who's done this presentation, I think, 11 times and seeing it evolve over time. It's been impressive because it's been a few years. But it does get repetitive. It is time wasting. I can look at in staff's faces on some of these meetings, and it's difficult for the public to navigate. And having one body gives it gravitas. I always say, if you're not on CATS, are you a real commissioner board? And so getting that sort of body to have kind of a plan commission sense of it, where these decisions do matter and they do make a difference. Getting these things with a real mission and real deliverables. When you have all of these boards and commissions, if they're not giving those deliverables, does anybody care? It's just, again, not making any difference if they have them or don't have them. So, I didn't know we're required to do grants for the Parking Commission. I thought it was like an or thing. So having sort of cleaning up some of these things now is a good opportunity to do so. The one thing, and it's like getting a free movie and complaining that the popcorn's too salty, but the appointments, the College and Walnut Corridor really wanted to have business. The Plan Commission reached out to me. I gave them a lot of contact information because it was important to me. And I just don't see the business community, which has the word community involved in that. And that's where at least a little bit on the new Transportation Commission should be just a little bit widened, just maybe about commerce and safety. We can put a price tag on safety, and having somebody with a little bit of a business acumen, I think would help, just to give a little bit perspective on that, because we can't simply have a project based on safety without looking at some of the dollars and cents. I think that's all of my scribbles that I can read right now, but I thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Appreciate you putting these meetings together.
I've also always wondered what your notebook looked like. It was cool.
Anybody else here in council chambers? Okay. Anybody else on Zoom? Thank you. Well, let's come back to this group then, if anybody wants to follow up on any of the public comments raised. I do want to ask Mr. Roebling about the Parking Commission. And when I look through the powers and duties of the ATC as proposed, item E doesn't really, which is about making recommendations on public parking policy, it doesn't really follow with the others, because the others are all about safety and review of transportation changes, serving as steering committee. Can you speak to how you see parking as belonging under this heading?
Yeah, so I kind of talked about this briefly, but parking demand management is transportation demand management. It's a land use dedicated to the storage of a transportation mode. You're a roadway user when you arrive to your parking spot. You're a roadway user when you leave your parking spot. There is a safety concern about where parking is located, about how much parking costs, because that will dictate where you park. You might park further or closer away. And so in order to have a comprehensive goal of the transportation system, we should include parking. And then as for E, it's more that writing it into the same language was tricky, so I just adopted the language that did work from Parking Commission, and then just to streamline it, because that was language we found to be useful and working, so we wanted to maintain it. But I fully believe that they work together hand in hand. Mr. Volan discussed that we would bring items forward to the Parking Commission that maybe they didn't need to see, but were required to see based on the writing of Title II. And so, and we believe that did work. Whether or not the Parking Commission actually weighed in the way that they thought was worthy is open to debate. But staff found it helpful to have those conversations about the totality of parking, not just the safety of parking.
What about the request to have somebody from the business community on this commission? I think that's particularly relevant for parking, and that's why there were 2 merchants on and 1 nonprofit to be, qualifications to be on the parking commission. But we won't have that voice on this new commission.
Not by default, sure. If council wants to hear a voice that is a merchant, they could still do that within the 2 appointees that aren't required to be a vulnerable road user. In fact, you could even find one that is probably. It's also, those are the 2 hardest to fill positions. I heard Mr. MG bring that up previously, and we thought about it. We really did. It's just finding one has proven difficulty. I believe one of the 2 currently is vacant and remains to be filled. So we didn't want to have a vacancy that was perpetual because it was so strictly required. But if that's something council wants to hear, then they have the ability to bring that voice to the table.
I guess beyond just the appointee, from the business community, just the concept of, the commercial or financial aspect of this is very important in parking, in that we are letting people use our right-of-way, we're trying to pay for our parking garages, et cetera. That makes it very different from safety concerns for roadway users. What do you say to that?
I would agree with that statement, but I don't see the ATC as only based on safety. I just see it based on safety first. It's something we have not done, with the exception of the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission. It has never been at the forefront of any decision making, and it needs to be moving forward.
Okay. What are others' thoughts after the public comment? Hopi? Oh, we'll go to Hopi first, then we'll go you.
Thinking more about the idea of advisory members and thinking about these last 2 members appointed by council that don't have to have that demonstrated experience with other forms of travel other than personal vehicles, and thinking about Monroe County Community School Corporation and really wondering if we should think about having a dedicated spot for them, even if it is an advisory, and specifically, talking to them and talking to the transportation department of MCCSC, because they do deal with a lot of travel issues, routing issues. I don't know how much communication happens between MCCSC Transportation and Public Works with regard to construction. and that kind of stuff, but all of that really, really affects them. And safety, of course, matters a lot to them because they're transporting children around, and so that's a really huge responsibility. So I guess I would really advocate at this point for some advisory members, and I don't necessarily advocate to increase the voting membership because of quorum issues, but I think that having those voices at the table on kind of a more permanent assignment would be really important.
Yeah, I would ask about, just if anyone can talk about, to me, right here in this setting, to help me understand, some commissions we talk about advisory committees, some we have ex officio members. What's the difference in the role or participation elements of an advisory member versus an ex officio member of a board or commission?
Well, I think by definition, ex officio is somebody who serves on a body because they hold a certain position, right?
Is there an effectiveness to that? Like if they can't vote,
You
right?
can vote, sorry to interrupt, you can vote if you're an ex officio.
Or an advisory, though, because I mean,
Advisory
what
member
Hopi just
is different.
suggested,
Yeah.
Hopi just suggested that we have more advisory members. So is that effective? I guess.
The way we've used them on other commissions is that advisory members do not have a vote.
So as I recall, Matt, as a ex officio, are you ex officio on the utilities? Is that called ex officio?
Non-voting ex officio.
Non-voting.
Ex officio doesn't necessarily mean non-voting. It does in the case of our USB appointment.
But advisory always means non-voting.
I think so.
In our context.
The advisory.
For me, the point would be having that voice there, but not having to add burden to the quorum. So, yeah. I guess I'm just really, because of other commission, and like I know that Bike Ped has had a hard time reaching quorum sometimes, and so from the history lesson, we just heard about Parking Commission, they had a hard time meeting quorum sometimes, and I think that has to be an issue that's considered whenever we think about these being volunteers. And yeah, so that's why I would consider advisory positions instead of voting members. And I think that how much advisory perspectives are taken into account just really depends on the culture that you set up. And I think that some people really listen to advisory members as experts in the room with their particular specialty, and other times advisory members are summarily dismissed. Starting from scratch, I think that it could be set up in such a way as to respect advisory members for their specific expertise or position. You could also say in some ways that staff are advisory members. I mean, staff is not listed here as voting members, so in theory, like, they could take a staff recommendation and go the exact opposite direction. But ultimately, staff is going to be making a recommendation. And I mean, most of the time in my experience, commissions tend to take staff recommendations. I'll say most of the time again, really hard. Most of the time.
I also like to go back to my original, or my earlier comment. I still am leery or hesitant on talking about codifying a characteristic that's not really well defined. I mean, we say demonstrated experience. Well, is that just the person saying they do this? Well, I do this all the time, and so therefore that's my demonstrated experience. It's not really verifiable. Whereas, like, if we require a bus driver, they have a CDL, right? It's something that you can produce. So I remember talking with Stephen Lucas about things sort of like this, where codifying can put you in unforeseen, unanticipated ways into a spot that doesn't give you the flexibility that you need. And so unless it's really necessary to codify something, I just don't know if I'm comfortable or I would want to go there.
Can I just ask for, I was looking at the HPC example that was brought up where the code says the membership shall include individual members with demonstrated expertise in historic preservation activities. Like, what are your thoughts about the relevant similarities or differences there and here?
I would say the same thing. I mean, if someone says, well, I'm just passionate about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Well, maybe, and then we should be clear about that, and we should make it consistent across the way we treat any body applying for any board or commission, and that should be something that's understood for our interview purposes. That
sure, yeah. I had a different follow-up question related to a public comment from Mr. Alexander. My apologies if this was covered while I was out of the room momentarily, but I don't think so. Which is just to kind of follow up on the, to use the example he gave, if the 17th Street multi-use path and related street design changes came through the ATC, I guess, A, would it, and would the design be part of the conversation and something the ATC is requested to sign off on, so to speak? And then B, I don't think we really discussed what would happen if the findings were negative, so to speak. So the commission concludes, actually, the widening of this intersection is counter to our safety goals based on this data, this Safe Streets for All plan and guidelines. What next? Staff brought a proposal, and they, it might be justified or whatever. Well, traffic volume says you need a left turn lane here, blah blah blah. Right? Like there's trade-offs always. But what happens next if the commission says no, or like we don't support it?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. At first, it would, there's no direct answer. There's a follow-up amendment to the municipal code that we would propose to adopt what is equivalent to the traffic calming and greenway program, but for any traffic improvement project. So the reviewing body would have some sort of authority to ask for redesigns. They wouldn't be able to necessarily negate a project or stop a project, but they could ask for different designs or design alternatives, and then staff would have to present those and then have an open discussion about what that means.
That's interesting. Thank you.
All right, any further thoughts?
I have other stuff. Just, we're getting to the nitty-gritty of like the makeup of this proposed commission, and I guess one of my hesitancies is that I think actually like some of the members, I just don't know how to say this. I don't know what focus on safety there may or may not be with like some of these boards. Like, I guess or members, like the Plan Commission and the Board of Public Works, because those are what I'm thinking about specifically. I guess I think right now with the three commissions, there are a lot of people on them, like community members who are like passionate and advocates of what they're doing on that board, right? Like on the commission. And I guess like I think I would want to appoint people with the safety priority in mind. And I don't know that would be the lens in which some of these appointees would view their role. And so then I guess I don't know that I would feel like a recommendation was coming to me that is like purely based in safety.
Maybe those could be the advisory members.
I guess I don't know, do any of you all like share that or because like why do we need someone from the Plan Commission, I guess? Like I also don't understand that, or the Board of Public Works. Like I guess I don't understand why they are like relevant to the safety priority of this commission.
This has been like my driving question all night, which is like, is this the right combination of people? I do think, though, to your point, and I think you had said earlier, there was sort of a list of criteria that decisions would be made by. And so I think that, decisions, I think that sort of structuring criteria in a way that so that recommendations that come to us say, thing A, yes, thing B, no, whatever, but substantial compliance with 5 things on this list, gives us the opportunity to make informed decisions. And I think, I think a lot of what we're talking about here is like, how do we use commissions better? Like, how do we actually make them, a substantial part of government decision making? And so I think even in that case, I think that there's a guard functionally there with the sort of, hey, we want the report to come in this fashion, maybe, but I don't know. But I mean, I've been all night like asking that same question. Like I do think that because you're going from this larger group to this, I do think that's the core question of like, is this the right composition of it? I mean, I think if the question on the table is, what we need to move it forward, I don't think there's anything here presented that I'm, at a no on. I very much feel like this conversation in my mind is a sort of a good, better, best conversation. But, so great. But that's the one thing that I think is worth us continuing to work on is, making sure that we feel right with that group.
Brian, did you want to respond to that?
Sure. We actually see those members as maybe the most important, not because of their ability to address safety, it's because of their decision-making ability outside of the ATC. So a plan commission member is important because they are the body who reviews the transportation plan. So if they go to an ATC meeting and hear routinely that there is a safety concern, they can come back and bring that to the transportation plan. Board of Public Works is a similar example, especially related to closures and things like that, where there are safety concerns that aren't being necessarily addressed, and it would be beneficial if they didn't hear something for the first time when a member of the public brings it to the Board of Public Works.
Okay, before you go, I was wondering if that is a little bit of it to get them in the loop. So almost they're there to listen, in which case I do wonder about having advisory members instead, if like it's not necessarily their perspective you're wanting, but you are wanting them to hear what's happening, to take it back to their body.
We do want them to hear what's happening, but I think there is some weight behind having to vote on something. It makes it more real, essentially.
Favor the approach, I guess. There are no shortage of issues. Safety, yes. Also accessibility, equity, sustainability, land use optimization. We're at the parking work session tomorrow. We're talking about land use policy with respect to surface parking lots, and we have some pre-existing non-conforming uses. We have some possible, non-compliant uses of surface parking. Generally, that's not allowed in code, but also, poor land use policy. And so like all those things, like there's Plan Commission obviously within all that, but then also Board of Public Works is responsible for approving street closures and sidewalk closures. And in my entire time on council, this has been a challenge. We had the former city engineer admitting we were, as a city, not even following city code. Instead of fixing it, we amended city code to make it less favorable to pedestrians, but something we were more likely able to follow. But that's actually still not happening. A lot of the construction happening right now isn't compliant, or doesn't seem to be. I witness that all the time. And so like raising these things and getting the interaction, I think, is actually really important. And like having that accountability structure to be like, hey, Joe, you're on Board of Public Works. Like this keeps coming up. Can you make sure that you bring it up every time Board of Public Works considers a closure, that you're asking the question? Is this compliant with section, X of code? Because it just still isn't happening. We still have challenges with this. So I think the like integration, I understand where you're coming from too, Kate, that like concerns about like it's not as maybe like mission driven or like by default. But I guess on balance, I hope or I'm optimistic that like the benefits of that deeper integration would be, would outweigh any downside.
I think it would be good to wrap up this topic because we have another topic for this evening as well. So any burning final things that people want to say, else I suggest you just work with Ryan.
Actions here or anything that?
Well, we can't take any vote.
No. I'm asking like what, when we say work with Ryan, should we all just? We've raised a handful of specific things that we want to see, but I'm concerned after 2 hours that we're where we started, right? Like, do you feel any closer to some resolution to the many questions? You do? Oh, great, good. Well, that's good. I do too. Then, so that's good. That is an open question. Like, is it worth? Is there anything that we're, we shouldn't leave things like up in the ether if we could discuss them here is all, I guess I'm saying.
Well, even though, I think this meeting has made me waffle on the Parking Commission being part of this. And I need to think more about that and talk with, members of the Parking Commission and better understand what they do and then talk with Ryan and others in planning. So I don't think it's anything that can be resolved now. And so I was going to recommend that others who have, doubts about the proposal to work with colleagues and staff to try to figure out if those rise to the level of a no vote unless it's amended or not.
Yeah, I'd like to add, since you brought that up, because I was going to say the same thing. After Councilmember Volan's, our former Councilmember Volan's comments, and other comments by staff and council members about the extent to which safety is a primary lens by which the commission would carry out its duties. I'm wondering if Parking Commission, I realize there is overlap, but I'm wondering if it does belong. I'm with Isabel on rethinking that or thinking seriously about that, the Parking Commission.
Opie?
Well, this changes the topic back to composition of the membership, but I would be a no vote on this if the composition fails to specifically include those who've demonstrated experience using forms of travel other than personal motor vehicles. Like, I think that that's really, really important. And one of the early concerns about this that I remember hearing was that there would not be bike ped representation on this and that it would default to vehicles. And it's very important to me that it not default to vehicles only. And so I would be a no vote if that got taken out.
Did you want more on the Parking Commission, Isabel? Did you want to keep, I could say I also am not quite sure where I land on that. Because this is about safety, I do worry that we will miss out on parking demand management, and I don't think we're really doing that much as a city for that right now. And not that a commission should lead it, but sometimes when it's kind of absent, it might need to for a while kind of thing. So I don't know how parking demand fits into the safety, transportation safety. Like, I do understand what you're saying about, backing in and safety of getting in and out of spots. And of course, like limiting parking limits driving to some extent, and that's safer. But I just wonder if we're going to miss some of the content.
If that's okay, which is on that point. I tend to think either approach could be okay, but I do see it all as quite integrated in the way that parking demand management, which is pricing, land use decisions, et cetera, is a sustainability driver. The purpose is actually to drive mode shift. And so to the extent that sustainability and climate action is incorporated within the Transportation Commission, and that's maybe actually a potential change. I don't know if the Climate Action Plan is formally adopted as part of the comp plan, and if not, it should probably be called out here separately because there is a transportation chapter that would definitely and should definitely affect decision-making here. And so while safety, I think, is the primary lens and maybe the pinnacle of the values, again, like sustainability and climate action, mode shift, transportation demand management, and land management, by implication, we removed parking along 7th Street for the 7 line, right? I see these things as deeply integrated, and that's true in our our comprehensive plan as well, but I understand the trade-offs too, so.
Said that I wouldn't be opposed to keeping parking out. I'm also, though, not opposed to this as it's been presented, in the sense that I think the leading outcome or driving outcome for me is as the goal to operationalize. I mean, this is what we've been talking about in special processes committee all year, is like, how do we, make commissions have more teeth and I think that this accomplishes that, and so I think that that's a really good start. But I also wouldn't oppose if you were to say, actually, let's keep parking and then let's think differently, maybe even as former Councilman Volin mentioned about ways that we might restructure the parking commission. I'd be open to that too, but I think as proposed, it sort of works well to the main thing that I would want to achieve here. But open to all of it.
Matt said, safety is very important, but that's not the only purpose of this commission. And so I really liked, and I'm sorry, my computer died, so I don't have it in front of me, but I really liked that it was like, there would be a checklist of, is this sustainable? Is this accessible? Is it safe? Is it, this, that, and the other thing? And then we're having all of these different eyes together on it, looking at, holistic view. So I think that's one thing to consider when we're debating whether or not parking belongs. I don't know if it does. It may not. I'm with you. I don't have strong feelings right now, but I may upon further reflection. But I like that it seems like it would be, ultimately every project would go through that checklist of, let's check, does it meet all of these requirements?
Okay, well, let's move on to our second topic. Before we leave the ATC topic, however, I think I do want to mention that the administration wants to bring this before the end of the year so that in January we could start interviewing people for the new, or making appointments to the new commission, because the other commissions, most of the terms end at the end of January. So it is kind of time sensitive. All right, so next let's talk about our council schedule for next year. And in the packet addendum, there was the schedule for this year, just as a starting point. Doesn't mean we have to replicate it. And I know in the Special Committee on Council Processes, we've talked about possibly doing more deliberative, less structured sessions, whether they be committee meetings or committee of the whole meetings, or more of these, what we've been calling CBAs. We haven't reached any conclusion as to what we would recommend to the council as a whole, but I think it's important to set some kind of schedule before the end of the year, just to get meeting rooms and to get it all on everybody's calendars and things like that. So I don't know if our staff has any input before we discuss on our schedule. Ms. Lehner, do you have any comments?
This is my first CBA meeting, I guess you would call it, or informal discussion. So it's my first exposure to it, and I don't have a strong opinion about it as a part of the schedule versus a regular meeting. I have attended regular meetings so far during my employment. And I think the schedule, I certainly wouldn't hold more than 3 meetings a month on a regular basis. The month of October seemed somewhat difficult because we did have a lot of meetings that month. That would be maybe one comment, although I know there are times during the year when that needs to happen.
I would also add another comment, just since y'all are talking about doing 2 regular sessions a month, that would mean we would have to add more items of legislation to those meetings, and that would mean that your meetings would also likely run longer than they do now. So that's just something to consider.
Yeah, thank I appreciate the staff's input there. So this year we had, in most months, we had the first 3 Wednesdays as regular sessions. Then the latter part of the year, we switched one of those in 3 different months to more deliberation sessions. What are your thoughts? Just throw it out. What are your thoughts for next year?
You all have heard me say it every time I get a chance. We should default to 1 meeting a month, and with space to do more if necessary, but I think that the if necessary should be a very weighted decision. I think that us meeting all the time is weird. Like we meet too much and too long, and it doesn't give us enough time to do. And this is the most important part. Like it's not that. I mean, it's fine. I love you all. Would love to meet more, but it doesn't give us enough time to do the real part of our jobs. And I also don't think it gives us enough time sometimes to think about things before they're presented to us. And we then end up with this like weird, like, we must read this and pass it next time. It just feels like this, like, I mean, why? Like, let's wait till next month and have some time in between to do fact-finding and work sessions or whatever else needs to happen in between. But I mean, we did 3 most of this year. We have met every single Wednesday and then had other stuff on top of that. And so I think you default to 1 and then do something like think about committees and things like that. That's what Indianapolis does.
Like 25.
Sure. Sure.
So, but fair, fair points. Yeah.
If we do only one a month, it may not be available for that, and that would necessitate pushing it off for yet another month. We've seen that happen a couple times this year, and staff was not available to present. So that's another thing to consider as well, is that there will be people who are not available and will not be able to present.
Yeah, I would strongly push back on the 1 meeting per month. Absent a strong proposal for committee meetings or some other way to move to deliberate and have public input on our decisions, because the only way once a month meeting would work, and I don't even think it would work then, but is if we had, here's the legislation, and 10 minutes later we vote, because we're going to have 10 things if we have a meeting once a month. And so if you're only going to have, 15 minutes per item, that means we darn well better have other public input and other discussion before it gets on that agenda. So, Hopi.
That even at that 1 meeting a month that then we're actually voting on, that is no guarantee that the public who's already commented at least once, twice, or 3 times is not also going to come and comment. And anything, even slightly controversial, is going to take an incredible amounts of time, and you never know what is going to be controversial to an individual or to a neighborhood. And I think that is a disaster, honestly, because that other work, you said, oh, it will give us time to do other work, but that other work is supposed to lead to legislation, which will then have to lead to those comments and those public forums and the debate back and forth, because we are never going to reach consensus, okay? There is always going to be the back and forth, and at that meeting where we're actually voting on it, that council member who disagrees or members who disagree are still going to say all of the same things and take up all of the same time, and it would just be a disaster.
Agreed. However, I will say that the reactions to it illustrate to me the strength of doing this, because it's actually forcing us to think more critically, both about time and about input. And I think that right now we take all of those things we're just like, we'll meet next, like everything's, and then we fill, like natural gas. It fills all the space. And I do think that us being more critical about when we meet does force us to actually think very carefully about how we operate.
Which is, I think, the heart of what you're getting at is that we spend so much time in our meetings talking about certain issues because maybe we don't have enough time with the legislative materials beforehand. So you're doing it your idea of doing it once a month then is we're getting that information earlier. So maybe then we can find another way to make sure we're getting the information about upcoming legislation earlier. So we have more time to research it, think about it, talk about it. But, you know, I love this setup tonight that we're having this chance to have these open conversations and deliberate openly and not have to do it in the formal setting where we're going to be making a decision right then and there. You know, much less pressure if we have more time. So I'm not saying do once a month. Sorry. I'm just...
I'm going to join Team East side of the table here and say I'm warming to the idea. I think it is workable. I think it entails a lot of changes. And so I don't think like it's fully baked by any means, but there's no reason it couldn't be feasible. Like maybe you don't have public comment at the final adoption meeting, and it's very clear in all communications, including on the council website and everywhere else, that the time for comment is sessions like these, or sessions that might even be more interactive with the public and more conversational and more deliberative, and seeking to understand, not simply, you know, state your piece from the podium. So I always want to be open to trying things differently, assessing the assumptions underlying those structures by which we, you know, kind of have by default or by culture operated. We've talked about this a little bit in the council process committee as well, and just noting, like I think we just need to continue trying things too, and workshopping through sessions like this, where it's like, if you will this shorten the time for consideration of the Advisory Transportation Commission ordinance when it comes to us? I assume so. I hope substantially so. And you know, if folks take follow-up from this meeting, and like I have a number of 4 or 5 probably small suggested changes to that ordinance that I will follow up with Ryan about. I might need to say nothing at all when it comes to us, apart from this worked pretty well. So all that to say, I don't know if we can just jump to 1 meeting a month in January next year, but I think I want to continue to experiment and iterate a little bit and challenge you know, some of the default ways we've operated.
After that, okay. I think we should all sing a song before until our voices pick up. I agree that it's not time yet, because who's on processes committee? Dave and Isabel. Okay, I saw you two over here. Okay, I think, you know, sometimes I just say things the way I see them. I think we do, you know, we have a spectrum of participation in everything that is city council. And I think until I see more council members and like different makeups in our ad hoc committees, I don't feel comfortable saying like, let's do other work as needed, and then just like be required to report out this one time a month, because I do feel like, I mean, I guess most recently I was on the committee to hire our new attorney, and I'm on the salary committee, and it is a lot of time, and it is, I would say, productive and efficient time well spent, but it is a lot, and I think those two committees have like one person different on them. So like I feel almost like a mom, but maybe that's not how people parent, to be like, show me that this is possible, and I am also up for trying different things in different ways. I do think it is a neat idea, you know, as someone who like commented before I ran for office, like publicly, it's both like good and bad, right? That council members like potentially change their mind up until the last minute. It's like, it can kind of go both ways. It's like that public comment can sway you, but also sometimes you want that time to have public comment and then go back and like double check or ask questions and do research. So it's like not going to happen at that meeting before a vote. So like that would be interesting to say, kind of like we don't do comment when it's the day of voting, because we've done, I mean, I don't know, because we've done it already, you know, kind of thing. Or like maybe we do it like this and the people sit here and we're like, hello. I suggested having tablecloths because it feels homey. And, but yes, I think it is a neat idea to change it. I do think though, like, I do think by the very nature of like kind of what our community expects of us participation-wise, and then the amount of work, like our code kind of like makes us do, the way it's written and how much is in it, like it is a lot of time, and that, so yes, I think if it gets like broken down into committees or other casual meetings, we just have to make sure everyone is like doing their share.
I do think that this overlaps clearly with other structural changes, right? And I mean, and I think we've played around with some of them, like this meeting now. So I mean, when we've talked about using committee of the whole, like within meetings as an example. We've talked about having a committee of the whole sort of that we can scheduled during the meeting. We say, hey, 2 weeks, we're going to have a thing, and we want to talk about this then. So I do think there's some, when I'm saying this provocatively, let's just meet once, I mean, I think that there's some therefores that follow from if we would do that. But the challenge is that when we say, let's meet twice, and this is, I've thought through this so often, we say, let's meet twice or let's meet 3 times. What we do is all of those same things that I'm saying are sort of therefores, but then we fill it up with all the other time, right? And so we don't necessarily do those to the best of what we could be using some of those things for.
I don't follow.
So like this month, we have 3. We had 2 or 3 meetings plus this meeting plus 3 new ad hoc committees. So we proliferate lots of these tools, and they're not in response to, hey, actually, we're trying to save time. When we're talking about ATC, for example, the idea actually wasn't, let's make sure that when we talk about it next time, it goes faster. Like those 2 ideas were sort of happening separately. So by doing this, you unify a lot of these mechanisms that we have for organizing. And it gives us a clear theory of organization. It says, hey, because this, therefore this. But right now, we just, meet a lot.
I'm sorry, I'm still not following. I don't think we meet just to meet. I think we have specific committees because we have outcomes we're trying to reach with those committees. And that's why we have, the elected salary committee. That's why we have the special committee on processes.
It's not that we meet just to meet. That's not what I'm saying. An example here, so using a specific mechanism, we could, at our general meeting, that maybe should happen once a month, we could use a consent agenda for things that we don't need, that are going to pass unanimously. What happens a lot of the time in our 4 meetings a month is that we will ask 2 hours of questions, make no changes to the thing, and then pass it unanimously. It sort of feels like maybe we didn't have to spend that long doing that. Have no public, like the comments of the public, maybe nobody has any comments. We spend the time publicly showing that we did something that we could have been doing in other forums.
I see.
You see, but all I'm saying here is that, again, it's a forcing function. So we have some of these mechanisms for us available to us, like breaking into a committee of the whole during a meeting, but we don't have any there's no impetus to do that at the moment, right? So I like an organizing principle that sort of forces us to think creatively about these other mechanisms that are available to us.
And efficient.
Yes.
Like efficiency is the bottom line.
Yes.
I think that it's literally our job to ask those questions sometimes. Like, I can appreciate that sometimes there are moments that it's like, oh my gosh, do we really need this much information, or do we really need to ask so many questions? But I think sometimes we don't have public comment because we've asked those questions, and people are going, oh, now I know about this thing. And I think that that's part of transparency in government. And I think that a whole lot of us ran on transparency in government. So to then advocate for shorter meetings so that we don't have as much information that's being shared, or that we have information being shared at a different time than the votes is I think in some ways that's hiding the transparency. I mean, it's based. I think that's irresponsible to the public.
That's fine.
Just briefly, I think Well, this is our third consensus building activity. This is very different than some of the other ones. I would like us to work on the practice of deliberation. I did not engage the topic earlier from Dave about the idea of council approval for final design of traffic calming projects, not because of time sensitivity basically, but I actually am interested in engaging that conversation in like a deliberative way outside the legislative proposal we're voting on context. And I think I'd like to I hope we can keep doing that in this kind of space where I guess I worry that we're still falling into the patterns of debate, and like let's like I'm just maybe we can try to like think about how understanding what Isak's saying, like how do we adapt that, or what are the concerns, but how might we address them in creative ways? And I think we all share what Hopi just shared, which is transparency in various forms. We all care about public input. I was hearing language about efficiency, which is a value. It's not the only value. Terry Amsler has come here repeatedly, right, and talked about that in the context of board and commission reforms, that we should be careful not to just be thinking about like dollars and cents, business, bottom line kind of mentality, because that's not what local government is, or government generally. But I think it's interesting that like what this surface is, I guess, is, are there other ways to make sure that the accountability that Hopi's raising is happening in terms of, there needs to be some check, there needs to be questions asked. Could those be done in written form and published along with the packet instead? So it's outside of meeting time, but still there and referenced. Just trying to get into the more generative kind of pattern of thinking, I guess, is my encouragement or hope.
So where does that leave us with a schedule for
Good question.
January?
Our code says that we have to meet in regular session on the first and third Wednesday of each month at 6:30. That's what code currently says.
Operative word, currently.
So we can revise code, but yes, I understand that's a bigger hurdle if we want to make a change.
What's our goal tonight? Like what do we want to decide about the calendar? I didn't know, are we just having a chat, or are we talking about when to say meet up in January kind of thing?
Well, I was hoping to get some input so that somebody could draft a calendar that we could then vote on in December.
I'm going to go again. I feel like right now, legislation through the end of the year seems overwhelming, basically, in our tight timeline on a lot of stuff, where I think I would recommend we start the year as is, as we're doing. I don't know, just be like 2 or 3, I think.
But one is a CBA? Or, well, right, we made the CBA proposal as sort of a pilot through the second half of the year. And so my question,
I beg of you, let us not call them CBAs. They are not consensus-building activities. We do not build consensus.
they could be, I was just trying. That was a bid.
They're deliberation sessions.
Yeah, sure.
I was, if we're talking,
DSS.
I guess I would almost, I do want to say I am up for, I love that this council is different than last term and that it is so up for trying new things and it's not a challenge, just let's do what I love that, I love it. And I love trying new things, especially with the clerk being so happy about it. I am wondering, this is what I was already thinking about January. I'm just going to get into the details of January. Because the 1st is on a Wednesday, that seems late, so I feel like schools and whatnot aren't starting. Do you all start back the Monday the 6th? IU and K through 12 and everything? I was wondering if we wanted to even push hours in January to the 15th for an organizational meeting followed by, why?
Because code says that, hold on. In years subsequent to the year immediately following its election, the council shall meet at 6:30 one evening, no later than the second Wednesday in January to elect officers. That's why. Code says that.
Following an election?
No,
We didn't have a
In years
city election.
subsequent to the year immediately following an
Oh.
election. In years following an election, there's a whole different line for that. And that's Indiana code, not just local code, but it's Indiana code. So we have to meet the second Wednesday in January.
Well, I think in that one, we should just do organizational. I don't know, you all, I don't know. I guess it could be organizational, then regular session, and we can be out the end of the month again.
Classes begin on the 13th, not the 6th.
What?
MCCSC does begin on the 6th, though. You're right about that.
I don't have to jump in. What about doing first and third Wednesday regular sessions, second Wednesday hold for something more flexible, including potentially deliberation sessions as a default? Also, just from a logistical standpoint, if there's not like a strong or compelling reason otherwise, I would prefer that we book council chambers every Wednesday of the year. Yes. So it's available. And just be like, we don't need to notice meetings for every Wednesday of the year, but we should have that room because things come up, you need additional meetings. And maybe that is the practice already, but just noting that. Thank you. Great.
I like that plan, even though it's not the perfect plan. I mean, 2 meetings too many, but no, I'm joking, jokes. No, but yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense because it's easy also to do away with the middle session if it's, what's funny, I don't, what
Sad when you.
that he was.
You're like,
we can do away with the middle thing if necessary, you know. But I think doing, one meeting first, a third, and something in between to allow for this type of open discussion, I think is good.
I would be in favor of that as well. If we're going to have deliberation sessions, we need to be clear that it's a lot of work to have a good deliberation session with the public. It's less, this one was less work, but the ones we had in August and September were a lot of work, and we engaged CJAM, and they wanted more advance notice than we gave them, and it's a lot. So we need to keep that in mind if we want to make deliberation sessions with the public a regular thing. I think we'll need a committee or somebody to take charge, like maybe assign one council member, for each one of them or something to be in charge of it. Or, I don't know, something, because, I mainly did a lot of it myself as council president, and it was a lot.
So did we just potentially land on regular sessions generally on first and thirds and special sessions on seconds, and we can define special session as they come, that they might be deliberation or they might be other things? Is that what we just landed on?
I think that's a great idea. I have no reason to say no to that.
Wow, that's incredible. Can I change the topic then?
Well, no, I want to.
Well, it's still about schedule. It's just not about schedule of regular sessions.
Well, I wanted to mention that, so for those second Wednesdays, we should also consider council committees. I think there are, currently in code, the standing committees of council have to meet on a Wednesday as well, which we can change code, but that's something to keep in mind if we want to reinstate some of our standing committees or come up with new standing committees. That Wednesday could be a time for them to meet. I think we've discussed more than once that we all want to be involved with the budget process earlier. And so I plan to propose a finance committee to start in January, which, if it's a standing committee, according to our code now, would have to meet on a Wednesday.
little bit, because it actually follows by what you just said about the budget, because the other thing that I was looking at was budget-related stuff. We have this budget advance meeting that this year was scheduled in April, and I think all of us wanted it scheduled maybe sooner. And then there was that whole extra meeting that we added in about like where we came up with our priorities. And I think that it would be good to like set that now so that then we're all prepared for it on our calendars, and maybe that could be a second Wednesday meeting. And that we also, I think this is the time to look at our departmental budget hearing week and figure out if there's anything different that can happen with that next year, which involves talking to the controller, I think, in the mayor's office, because that week is a lot.
Task force, yeah.
Can you remind us about the budget task force, what we're supposed to do?
Said it should be a committee, but then remember we amended the resolution to say task force for some reason. I can't remember why, but it's supposed to be. I can't remember who actions it though. Was it? I think we wrote that the mayor would put together a task force, or maybe we left it without a subject. But there should be a task force that we're supposed to have, and maybe the reason was this standing committee issue, right? Supposed to be the mayor and friends, controller, and us, I think was the idea.
Right, so that's not a committee of council
Right.
by definition, because it has
Right.
people that are not on council.
Right.
Yeah.
We invited the administration, or sort of implored them to convene and lead, but with our involvement. I'll try to
So I
check.
think we do to put budget things on the schedule, we do need to have a conversation with Controller McClellan and the mayor. Those are important too, because our usually our schedule also has our budget week, which we may not want to do the same way.
We had talked about, it just was hard last time, I think it was your idea, Kate, to make it 2 weeks or something like that, right? So it's not like 16 hours in a row, and there's, there are other things happening in like county council still has meetings, so I just think we might want to be a little bit less like the world revolves around us in the settling of those meetings too.
That had to do with the state regulations and like when the county received, or when the controller received certain information.
Sure.
And turnaround time, and I don't know if that's any different this year, but
I mean, I think in addition to us having the longer conversations about budget, something that I'd really like, and I think we sort of saw this happen this year, but then it was too close to the deadline, so it became really pressure-filled, was, it's sort of like we have the sort of formal hearings of, hey, this is sort of the proposal, and then there's sort of like some time, and then we should have another conversation that's not the day before it needs to be voted for, right? Where we've been able to get our questions back and discuss. I think the way it went this year, the way at least I remember it, I still have like PTSD, but it was like, we had those intense 4-day meetings right as school was starting, and then we asked our questions, some revision, then we sort of talked about it, but then kept doing other business. And so I could sort of feel like it would be nice to sort of like have a week and then some time and then like another like budget week, type of thing. Something more like that would be really nice.
Agree. As a council member who put a lot of questions into that document, that Google Drive, I did feel like there was no time to digest that or to, deliberate on it.
We put together an annual schedule kind of as a matter of convenience, and I think as a default set of, default meeting cadence when recesses are scheduled, et cetera, like that's great. I don't know if we have to schedule everything in the budget necessarily with an annual schedule immediately. Like it feels to, I know there's like weird inputs around like state timelines, how long it takes, like everything's very tight. We did explore this with the previous administration. Like basically like the answer is like, can we do this across more than 1 week? Like was like, no. Surely that can't be true. There are trade-offs involved in doing so, and I don't really recall at the moment like exactly what those are. But it kind of feels like maybe we need a finance committee. Maybe some deliberative sessions might be, the finance committee might be charged with planning and leading in conjunction with all the council to kind of replace budget advance, so to speak. it seems like we also might need this task force, and maybe the members of a finance committee are the members of the task force that is convened with the mayor and staff, right? And might need to be on like a set up soon and accelerated kind of timeline that like maybe they're charged with meeting December to February and coming up with a set of recommendations, and then the finance committee's kind of taking it from there, and we get going. But I guess my point here, besides proposing some of those possible structures, is that it might be better suited for that process to generate a proposal for how we have budget hearings rather than us picking. I mean, we could pick 4 days in August right now by default or something, but I would like to change that, and I think most of us would.
I like that a lot.
I like that too, and I think what we talked about this 2024 too is that it's hard, or recess happens and then we come back and it's like right into the big budget week, and I don't necessarily think we need to change when recess happens, but I think if we start the budget process actually like before recess, like if there is a time where it's like, here's what council thinks, and we're sharing that with the administration, I almost think like recess is a good natural break then for like us not to hear back from the administration so much. Like if they're like, let us get our ducks in a row, and then when you come back from recess, we're gonna have a proposal for you, instead of when you come back, we're gonna hear what you want, and then, just trying to change some things around recess so that it's not so, like you said, pressure filled. I think I do want us to do a better job here at council to always leave room for another session if we need it, because I think it ends up being like kind of just a weird, almost like bargaining chip, or like, what do we call it, like a nuclear button, and like it's never really going to work like that, like salary ordinances included, right? And like Matt and I had talked about, we did stop doing committee of the whole, and for the most part with the intention of like, if we need a third reading, we can of course have a third or a fourth reading. And I think when we are scheduling legislation, we need to just think about that a little more, that let's just kind of anticipate a lot of sometimes like this might have to go to a third reading. Those are like two thoughts combined, but.
Sort of combining these two ideas, I mean, a lot of our discussions need to be around the outcomes, and I think that's, this year, we moved slightly towards that, and then basically went, here's some outcomes, here's a programmatic budget, let's talk about outcomes again. And so like what would be really, what we want to be able to do is have this really clear through line throughout the year. And I think a lot of the, the early heavy lifting is that. It's like, what actually do we want? Like, it's not what individual things do we want. It's like, what do we want as outcomes? And maybe it's, it's just like, these three things in the comprehensive plan, whatever, like however we want to approach that. But it's like, we have to engage very early on that conversation. Like it can't be a thing that we, comes up in August, right? Like it should be all throughout the year. These are the things that we want to see.
Well, I can reach out to the controller and the deputy mayor to see whether this task force has been contemplated by the mayor, or I can reach out to the mayor herself.
I looked at the language, it does say the council will work with the mayor, so there's some implied action steps that the council has not taken probably.
Yes, okay, so I will reach out to them about the task force, and I think that Matt's idea about if we create a finance standing committee, those council members should be the ones on the task force. That makes total sense. And that they can then meet in January, February, and then propose a schedule for budget stuff for the rest of the year. Does that sound reasonable?
I'm pretty quiet.
I just want to say, sometimes I get the sense that there's this belief that council and the way council does business is and always has been inefficient. And it's not that I don't think that efficiencies can be significantly made, but I just disagree fundamentally with this idea that there's just kind of general tendency to be inefficient on council. I think in the way we do our business, I think certain aspects of the democratic process are certainly inefficient, but that's what it is, right? There's a democratic process. And this idea of, someone made the analogy earlier, let's say gas, we fill the room at meetings. I don't see it that way at all. I think it's more often than not, it's more like a gel. And when you try to compress it or condense it in one area, it just manifests itself somewhere else that takes time and then creates other issues and problems, other things you got to deal with. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to say that.
I just tapped this automatically to turn it on, which is hilarious. I just want to say I really appreciate the gel analogy there. It oozes.
Gas, that's what you're saying. I tend to agree. I think a good idea is, if you look at the legislative history of the council, it's like almost quadrupled in the last, just by packet material in the last 20-something years. So the council is doing a lot more, seemingly. And I mean, demonstrably, you can see. Of course, we have to be attuned to what the administration is going to be bringing in terms of needed ordinances and resolutions and so forth. But I like this idea, who gave it voice, I think it was Hopi, that we, or actually it was Matt and Hopi. So a regular session twice a month, first and third Wednesdays, correct? And then the second week is a special session. So it gives us the latitude to decide what we're going to do. And it could be similar to a regular session, right? I mean, we could schedule ordinances for approval, et cetera. We just wouldn't have reports from mayor, council, public, or would we? We could. It generally doesn't include that, or appointments of boards and commissions, or adoption of minutes. But I think it's great. I think that covers the basis, that format.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
We need to decide on recess and that kind of stuff, but I think whoever is kind of leading the next step of putting something together can kind of decide based on historical practice, and we can make adjustments as needed. So I don't think we need to decide that now, just acknowledging that those decisions do need to be made at some point.
Well, I guess I will work with staff and on the draft schedule, and for the budget, I'll check with the mayor's office. But does anybody feel strongly that the recess should be the period of our council recess should be significantly changed?
No, I don't feel strongly that it should be changed.
The only point I'd make in this, because this did come up this year, is how it interacts with budget, right? So I think your earlier point is just really pertinent here. That so as long as we're mindful of actually moving forward some of the budget things, so we're not in a situation where it's like we can't talk about this because we're not all here type of situation.
Well, let's think about that. So if we have our recess earlier, then we would be available in July, more likely be available in July to consult as the budget is finalized. Mm-hmm. So there may be something to be said for an earlier council recess.
But maybe this is one of those, things to discuss once we have clarity on, right? I mean, once we have clarity on some of the budget questions that we've raised, I think it's easier to make that decision. But I would agree with you if things were the same, it would be nicer to have it earlier, if at all. Yeah.
Like moving it like a week, is that, or like
instead of June, right? Is that where it was?
Start at the beginning of June.
We have to have at least one. We have to have at least one meeting a month. So this last year, we actually had, if you only count regular sessions, 3 meetings in June and then 1 meeting in July. But we could flip that or have 2 in June and 2 in July, and that would still probably give
example,
about
yeah,
the same
sure.
amount of time. I also wanted to point out, though, that we do need to have, in terms of that first and third, and then second, need to have some flexibility with that in some ways.
Yeah.
I'm just noticing in this materials from this last one, there was this note like, hey, we decided to hold a regular session this week instead of another week because of moving a different regular session because of spring break. So it's a good start to a model, but I think really what we're saying is 2 regular sessions a month and 1 special session a month is what we're shooting for.
All right. I think that's it. Oh, yes,
this item.
public comment. My apologies. Public comment on council schedule for 2025. You can come up to the table and state your name and sign in, please.
Thank you, sir. You know I couldn't resist this. This meeting was advertised as a CBA, but it's turned into a committee of the whole. A CBA, by the way, is just a euphemism for a charrette. We used to design charrettes. We should do them, but it's great. It's just we don't need to call them something different. You guys are still using call it committee of the whole, but this is the way it was intended to be used as an informal session around a table. If we had been using committee of the wholes this way, it might have been better, but it's still not the way to do business. You're still fulfilling code with the first 3 Wednesdays a month, the schedule you've had this year and last year. But the life that Councilmember Asari seeks can be found in your pre-2023 schedule. 2 meetings a month, odd Wednesdays. The old way was tried and true. It's just that committee of the whole was misused at that time. Appoint a few members, like with a finance committee. They can be ad hoc for each ordinance if you have to. Let them think about an item referred to them on even-numbered Wednesdays. Let them report back the next odd Wednesday. Roberts says a standing committee doesn't have to report back on an item referred to it until the second regular session after it received the item. If you meet regular session on odd Wednesdays, you get it the first Wednesday, think about it the second Wednesday, maybe you keep it for the fourth Wednesday, and it comes back the first Wednesday of the next month. That builds in time to think, the deliberation time you're all seeking. With the previous schedule, that builds a genteel month into the decision-making process. If you don't like meeting so often, only the appointed council members who are on that ad hoc committee or standing committee have to attend on the even Wednesday. The others have the option to attend, but don't have to be there. They can trust their colleagues to make that decision for them, or to at least to make a recommendation, and then the whole council can debate it, but spend less time doing it in regular session. Also, you've got to start considering time limits on more than just comments. No, staff doesn't have to have unlimited time to present. No, council members don't have to have unlimited time for Q&A. No, staff don't have to have unlimited time to respond to council member questions. No, you don't have to extend public comment at the beginning of the meeting because people showed up. Neither you're serious about time limits or you're not. The amount of work before you is only going to grow. At some point, you're going to have to acknowledge that you can't be in on every conversation, even the public ones. You all are going to have to delegate. A consent agenda is a great idea. If we didn't use it before, it's because some member used to prefer to be in on every conversation of every item. But the packet is transparent. Often there doesn't need to be any comment because there's no controversy. Some members feel an obligation to be apparent in their performance of their duties. I felt that obligation too. But a consent agenda is one very good tool for cutting back the use of public time. Committees themselves are another good tool, starting with a finance committee. It's the #1 committee of second-class cities in the state. Every other city has committees, is a finance or budget committee. If you were to name 2 or 3 other standing committees and divide up all the different work that might come before you into one of those 4 committees, you can all save some time on even-numbered Wednesdays. Something I'd be happy to talk about after the meeting. Thanks for hearing me out.
Awesome.
Thank you. Is there anybody on Zoom who has indicated by raising their hand that they would like to speak? Thank you. Anybody else in council chambers?
I just need an excuse to get up. This is Christopher. I'm MG from the Chamber of Commerce again. One thing that was mentioned in our advocacy council was just the length of meetings for the council. And I want to echo some of former council member Volan's points. But when we talk about the consensus building meetings, or what were they called, Madam President?
Sessions.
This is the questions you always have to ask yourselves. What did you get out of that? And was it worth the effort? Was there other means to get that same information? And that's the key. Your time is not infinite. You only have a certain amount of capital, and to use it wisely. And it goes for some of the Q&As. Maybe have staff do these presentations on video open to the public, and then you can ask questions and sort of deliberate that way. I think there's mechanisms to sort of streamline this a little bit while keeping the transparency, while keeping it open, while engaging the public the same way. So I think there's changes that need to be made. I think some trial and errors are in order, because right now it's not, I would say, not working. I mean, might have gotten rid of the committee as a whole from the last council, but I don't know what that's really done. I kind of like the council as a whole. At least this was a little bit more regimented, but anyway, we have some work to do, I think, to kind of get these tamed. I've heard some good ideas. I heard from Isak here had some good ideas. I think so. We just need to try some of these and see what works to get this just a little bit better for the public, and I think for the council too. I think looking at some of the faces past 10 o'clock, there's a noticeable difference from the 6:30 p.m. time slot. So, anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public care to comment on the council schedule for 2025?
Sorry, I should have opened that for you.
Joe Davis. I want to make sure that the public is still going to be able to have adequate measures to provide input. Perhaps fewer meetings might simplify the efforts of the council members, but if it ends up disenfranchising the public, then we should really think about how we can increase the public's opportunity to provide comment on issues that are taking place. So I don't know exactly how that is. Maybe it means that the public has an opportunity to present questions to the council in the interim, but the public needs to still have their full ability to participate. Reducing the number of meetings reduces the voice of the public. So this is something that must be thought of in this situation to fix your schedule. So it's not only your schedule, but it's the public schedule as well. Thank you.
And be sure to sign in again, please. Oh, clerk has got it. All right, anybody else here in council chambers? Has anybody raised a hand online? Thank you. All right. Well, I think that is it for our agenda this evening. As I mentioned earlier, we have nothing under our pending legal matter to discuss tonight. Yes?
Can I just remind council members who have not done so that Councilmember Zulik sent out a message about time spent on this while we're talking about time spent in meetings. I checked. I think that there are 5 responses to that right now, and there are 9 of us, and my math says that means 4 people haven't done it yet. So if you are one of those 4 people, please do it. Thank you. It's anonymous.
All right. Please look at that survey that was sent out. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.